movie so much. It pains me not to put it at number one because it is a bona fide masterpiece, just like you said, Bill, like Spirited Away and Mononoke. Oh, it's everything about it so good. And shout out to flippin' Billy Crystal for playing Calcifer.
The whole time,
what a good performance.
The whole time, Alex was like, "Who is that? I know that voice." And I'm like, "That's Billy Crystal." And she's like, "Who did he play?" And I just looked up, and the first thing I saw, I was like, "Oh, it's Mike Wazowski." And she's like, "Yeah," because he's basically doing his Mike Wazowski voice the entire time, and it's amazing. The whole cast in this film is excellent. Like Christian Bale
is perfect.
Christian Bale as Hal is really good, even though it's such an odd role for. When I think Christian Bale, I think like his awful Batman like voice that he does. Hey guys, I'm Bill, a one-time Instagram blogger and now a podcaster.
And I'm Alex, the chaotic neutral.
And together we are the Gaming and Collecting Podcast.
A brother-sister duo
that talks about gaming.
And also anime.
And don't forget the collecting, sometimes.
Ah, forget it. We're just a nostalgia podcast at this point.
But anyways, guys, thanks for joining us as we discuss the games that shaped us. So, this is where I'd normally say, "How you been?" But we actually have a guest this time, and I'd like them to introduce themselves.
Hey, I guess that's my cue. Hey, my name is Rick Firestone. I'm the host of Pixel Project Radio, a video game podcast, and I am so excited to be here today.
Oh, thanks for joining us, dude.
We're so excited to have you.
And as I say every episode, how you been?
is that directed to me?
Yeah,
just anybody really.
But go for it.
Oh, thank you. I'm good. I'm so excited to talk about this topic today. I'm just super pumped about it. But other than that, I am doing okay, I suppose. How are you?
We've been doing all right. We've been kind of dropping that on our guests lately, just to kind of
spice things up,
get them used to our weird sense of humor on this podcast, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But we've been living life. It's finally starting to get warm up here, but like because it's New England, we just took a shot back down to cold again, so we're kind of going through that, and then doing the daily work grind.
Oh yeah. No, work's been good. It's been very busy, but like, fulfilling busy. A lot of the stuff I'm working on at work is just working on at work. That was a weird sentence. A lot of the stuff it's been really exciting stuff that people are really enjoying. So it's been very fulfilling, I'd say, like the past couple weeks. Challenging but fulfilling. I don't know. Me and my mom have taken golf lessons, and every time I'm like, why does this teacher keep asking us back? Because we're insane. We have the most great, like I don't know, we're just weird. But I mean, if you've watched this show, I mean listen to the show, because there's no video, this is a podcast. You understand, we're a strange bunch, the Barber family. So
Yeah, it's funny. She's really busy, but like I'm like super slow right now, just because.
Don't worry, it's gonna get busy, Bill.
I know. We're in that kind of catching up. We're basically caught up with the end of the year product right now, so now we're kind of in that slow in between period where they don't really need anything new. So like being a maintenance guy, I really don't have much to do at the moment. But sure, I'm pretty sure it's going to get crazy pretty soon, and I'm going to be tired all the time again.
Wait, Bill. Just you wait.
Yeah. But other than that, though, it's been pretty good. I'm trying to actually play video games, but I keep getting
Yeah. You like video games?
No, I just like to buy them and put them on my shelves,
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
That's what collecting has just become these days.
You mean hoarding?
It's the same thing.
No, it's not.
Do you have, and I know the answer to this, but I'm playing this up for the audio drama. Bill, do you have a display case? Do you display your things?
Yes, I do. I actually.
Oh yeah.
Well, there you go. Then it's not hoarding. That's the difference between collecting and
All right,
hoarding is a
all right.
display.
I've
I
always
mean-
referred to collecting as like it's just organized hoarding.
It's organized hoarding.
We have a rhyme and reason to it, but we're still really in reality just hoarding a bunch of shit for no reason.
But it's on display, so it's fine.
Yeah.
It's a collection.
Yes. But yeah, other than that, I'm kind of balancing between like the games, the manga, and the anime because
Anime.
I have way too many things I'm into collecting.
Yeah. I'm sorry. It's partially my fault that you got into the figure, so it is my fault. It's not partially, it just is.
Yeah.
I took him to the figure store one day and he never looked back.
It happens. But yeah, so I guess moving from there onto our topic. So for this episode, we're actually we've been on a gaming kick lately, so I think it's about time we switch back to the anime half of our show.
Yeah.
And for this one, this is actually kind of an interesting thing. So we're not doing an anime swap, and we're not doing a 3 anime films this time around. We're actually kind of doing a retrospective. And this is actually the first anime retrospective I think we've done officially.
Hiccup.
So for this episode, we're actually going to be taking a look at the Studio Ghibli films, particularly the ones created by the studio's head. I'm going to probably butcher this name. Hayao Miyazaki. I believe that's how it's pronounced.
It's close enough.
Sounds
Yep.
right to me.
And for this list, because for time's sake, we were mostly we decided we're going to focus on strictly the films he directed. Not every film Studio Ghibli did, because that would be a significantly longer episode. And
Jeez.
Yeah. And these are, I guess, some of the best, you would say.
They are, and not saying the other films are bad, because they're not, but they're very different stylistically than Miyazaki's films. Like Miyazaki's films just have kind of a distinct like look and feel to them. There's a reason why he's considered the Walt Disney of anime in a lot of ways. So I guess to start this off, I think it'd be cool to actually talk about like just kind of history with like the Studio Ghibli films. And I figure because you're the guest, Rick, I'd like you to start. Like, how exactly did you discover like the Studio Ghibli films?
Sure. So I was a relatively late comer to the works of Studio Ghibli. I saw my first one in my undergrad. My girlfriend at the time and I watched Howl's Moving Castle, and that was the first one that I had ever seen. I had seen like Spirited Away because that was such an intensely cultural phenomenon. You know, it was I lived in the middle of nowhere, and it was in our Walmart, so it was massively successful. But I didn't see that until years later. I saw Howl's Moving Castle first, and was just blown away. And it started a lifelong love for this studio. My history with TV, especially after I like went to college, is kind of weird because I don't watch a lot of TV or movies anymore. I'm starting to watch more now, but so I haven't seen everything that Studio Ghibli has put out. So whenever I say like, oh, I love them so much, I'm sure there are some people like, well, you haven't seen this. You haven't watched My Neighbor Yamada yet. It's like, yeah, I haven't, but I'll get to it. But every single Ghibli film I have seen it's just been wonderful. It's I think everyone at some point has moved me to tears, and I come away just feeling so good about the music and the animation and the voice acting. It's all incredible. And you were talking at the beginning, Bill, about Miyazaki being the main cat. I actually, one of the films from Isao Takahata is tied for first for me for my all-time favorites. We're not talking about it today, but just thought I'd throw that up.
Nah, like I said, like the non-Miyazaki films are all also excellent, but they have such a different feel to them than like his do, which I think is both no, actually, I don't think it's bad at all. I think it's a great thing. Like I said, I think
Mm.
this was mostly just a trying to keep it strictly the
Oh, yeah.
Miyazaki films, just because it took us long. Me and Alex, it took us long enough to get through all of these like alone.
yeah.
I don't even know if we tried to do all of them, how that would go.
Yeah, this podcast would have been pushed off a lot farther back if we had
Yeah.
tried to watch them all. But I mean, we enjoyed everything that we watched. Like, it was
Mm.
definitely like something that we've had on our bucket list for a while, and we were glad to finally check it off that list.
Yeah, because I guess like to go into it, believe it or not, actually, me and Alex, I don't know about Alex 100%, but for me, like I, for the longest time, kind of avoided these films. Not because I didn't,
Ooh, interesting.
not because I didn't like them. I think it was more just so it's not a huge secret. I'm not the biggest Disney fan out there. Like I have nothing wrong with Disney itself. It's just something about it has always been kind of just. It's never really appealed to me as like a person.
Yeah.
And I think because Miyazaki was always seen as the Walt Disney of anime, something about that kind of like my brain was being dumb and was like, I don't want to
No.
watch these. They're everything I don't like about animation. So my brain kind of lived in that weird like bubble for a long time. And it wasn't until like probably a couple years ago where I finally was like, I got Disney Plus and I was kind of watching through everything. And I was kind of realizing, you know what? A lot of this stuff is actually pretty good. Like, and it was just mostly my child, like like late 2000s emo self, just kind of being like angry in the corner and being like, I hate everything colorful.
Oh God. Yep, I remember that phase.
I will say though, going through these films, you had it too, Alex. But
hey, yeah,
I will.
We've all had it.
Yeah, everybody had their angsty teen phase. But so I guess
never left it. No, just kidding.
I do love my emo music.
You do.
But anyways, so I did notice though, when we were going through a lot of these, I actually recognized a lot of these films more than I actually thought I did. Like, because I saw Kiki's Delivery Service way back in like the early 2000s, like because Disney and like Cartoon Network used to play those on repeat like all the time. And like I had vivid memories of like specific scenes from all of these films. So when we ended up inevitably, you all right, Alex?
I'm sorry. I just had a thought. I was remembering when I was listening to the podcast we were on with Slade, and now we had background music.
Are you okay?
And then I'm sorry. Then I was like, oh, I wonder what music we would have. And the first thing was.
Are you okay?
I don't know why. I just made myself laugh. So what I'm trying to say is, I was remembering when I was listening to the podcast we were on with Slade, and now we had music in the background in my head. I'm like, I wonder what music we would have in the background. And the first thing that came to my head was
Just please type it in the chat because you clearly.
Yeah, that's 4 times. I still don't understand what she said.
Yeah, there's the clown music.
But I was thinking like,
Okay.
I don't know why. It just popped into my head, and I couldn't stop thinking about it.
Okay, calm down there.
I'm sorry.
All right. 12 minutes in, we already broke it. That's new
Sorry.
record.
Since you were talking, I was just going in my head. Do. Anyways.
Oh boy.
I'm so sorry. I don't know why it just popped into my head. I can't get it out. Anyways,
Okay.
I'm just gonna. Don't mind me. I'm just gonna be in the corner, getting myself together.
Okay. Wow, that's a first. We've never broken Alex that quickly before.
It almost seems like she broke herself.
I did. That's the thing. I don't know why. I was just having like a thought, and then it just really made me laugh. I wish you could insert some cloud music through that whole part of me laughing.
I might just I'll probably just fast forward it in post.
Okay, probably for good reason.
Yep. But where were we?
I'm so sorry. I just really got the case of the giggles for a second.
All right. So, all right, Alex. Now, how did you discover Studio Ghibli?
I believe I discovered Studio Ghibli during high school or middle school, because I was very much into the browsing anime on my laptop and hiding it so no one could see, shutting the laptop or closing the window. Um and I don't know, I think I just like discovered Totoro because he was pretty popular with like I remember seeing him like in Hot Topic all the time. Um and I was like, "Oh, he's cute. Where is he from?" And then that's kind of how I found it. I was just like, "Totoro's a cute little guy. I want to know who he is." And that's kind of how I discovered Studio Ghibli. Granted, I didn't really go that far, but also at the time, I don't think a lot of the movies. I don't know. I don't know how many of these were out at the time, but I love that movie. I was like, this is just a fun, happy movie, and this was a good time. And for some reason, I didn't dig any deeper. I was just like, this was a good time, and I enjoyed this movie. And I don't think I realized there was other ones out there.
So the funniest part about that was I didn't realize that was like the extent of your knowledge,
Yeah.
because you have like this Studio Ghibli pillow just like in like the foyer.
Yeah, but it has Totoro, and I really like it.
But I thought you were into all the films for the whole time, so I was very.
I had seen Totoro and I had seen Ponyo only because Ponyo was like. I don't know what, but when Ponyo came out, it was like peak when I was still watching either Disney or something, and I just remember the commercials on repeat, and it would always play this stupid Ponyo song, and it's just in my brain forever, like the Ponyo song, and it's in my brain forever, and I can't get it out, and it will probably be in my brain for the rest of the week now that I'm thinking about it. So maybe that's why I didn't go into watching anymore, because I just remembered Ponyo in the back of my head and said, no, thank you. I don't want that in my head for the rest of my life. But here I am, and it's still here.
Well, now you've got clown music, so who's the real winner here?
Not me, apparently.
It's weird how like I was thinking this when she said clown music. The first thing that came to my mind was Three Dog Night. The Show Must Go On just started playing in the background.
No, I was singing.
That's what That's what Show Must Go On by Three Dog Night has.
Yeah, no,
yeah, they sample that. They sampled that in that song.
Exactly what was going through my brain, and I feel like that should play during all of our podcasts because it would fit perfectly.
Yeah, we'd probably get we'd probably get a copyright strike for that. But anyways, so it's actually interesting that like going into this, Rick, you had said like you hadn't most of these, like this was like your first time seeing a lot of them.
I wouldn't say first time like for this show. There were a couple that I watched for the first time for this show. And I'll bring those up when appropriate, but a lot of these I have seen before.
Okay. So for me and Alex, it was actually, other than like for the only one I had seen in full before this was Kiki's, and I believe Alex, it was Totoro. And
yeah.
Did you even finish Ponyo, or did you just see the first?
No, I did see Ponyo because I believe it was on Disney at some point.
I think actually all of these were on Disney because Disney handled the dubs for most of these.
Yeah, but I remember this one was it was like much more. I just remember it much more out there because I think it was when both of the actor and actresses for the main characters, their siblings were all like key actors on the Disney Channel at the time. So I think it was even more popular because of that. Because it was like Miley Cyrus's sister and then the Jonas Brothers' little brother. So like it was very popular, I believe, at the time. I just remember it always playing, like the ad for it always playing on Disney.
Okay. But basically for the audience, me and Alex, most of the films in this was our first time seeing them. So these are going to be genuine reactions.
Yeah.
And I figure the best way to go about this would be just to kind of go through them chronologically. So the first one is actually, in my opinion, probably the most interesting, and that was Nausicaa, the Valley of the Wind. And this film, I didn't realize just how old this film actually was, because this was 1984.
Yeah.
And for 1984, this film looks amazing in a lot of ways.
And it was pre-Studio Ghibli's formation too, but they kind of retroactively claimed it, which is good and appropriate because all of the DNA of Ghibli is there.
Yes.
down to the score, which, by the way, this score is so like 80s synth heavy.
Oh,
I
yeah.
love
Oh,
it.
yeah.
I love it.
I
Yeah,
love this. The whole time I was just pretending to be on the synth through most of the music in the movie, and Bill was like, enough, enough. And I was like, never, you can't stop me. I love the music in this. I also love the creepy little baby bug singing. That was also a great time. Where you would just be like, la, 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 song. And that would be this. It was in my head for a good week after watching that movie.
So I don't know if we want to go like about this with kind of just a plot summary, because I feel like that would just be a little bit too much.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like the best way to describe I guess like we should probably just give kind of like a basic plot, which is essentially this is a post-apocalyptic kind of like fantasy film
Mhm.
where it's essentially the world was kind of decimated and like nature has kind of like reclaimed it, and there's kind of like small sections of humanity that still exist in this like kind of like deadly world.
Yeah.
Kind of like The Last of Us in a way, but instead of fungus monsters, it's giant insects.
Giant beetle monsters.
I will say, if you're not a fan of bugs, this movie might be a bit
Yeah,
hard
that's
for
a
you to
good
watch.
warning. If you're not a bug fan, you will not like this movie.
And for those of you that like the hit game on the Sega Saturn, you're going to love this movie.
Yeah.
Thank you for laughing at that, Bill. I was worried for a second.
Bug is a good time. So we kind of mentioned it before, but one thing I really love about the Ghibli films, particularly the Disney ones, is that they got like celebrity talent to voice a bunch of the characters in every film.
Oh, yeah.
And my favorite part watching each one of these was just like looking for like the celebrity voice that like I just knew.
Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah. This film had Patrick Stewart in it though as
Yeah.
Lord Yupa.
Lord Yupa, yeah.
And this movie also introduced a lot of the tropes that a lot of Ghibli films would feature, particularly an emphasis on strange flying contraptions,
Oh, yeah.
kind of a lot of like strong female protagonists, which was really cool for anime at the time. Like Nausicaa is an awesome character. Like she's not like too perfect like in the case of like some anime like heroines, but she's also like not like super flawed either, so you kind of it kind of I don't know where I'm going with
It makes her very likable,
Yes,
like
yeah.
she seems like a real person, not like this almost like the ideal person. Rather, she seems like something that's like an attainable person. They have their flaws, but they also have they have the things you like about them as well. They're definitely like very realistic. Um, yeah. I mean, I really enjoyed this one. Was like a surprise because at first, I'm not gonna lie, when we first started watching, I was like, oh, like this is not gonna be a film for me. But I really did enjoy it. Just because I'm not a bug fan. But I learned to like the bugs, especially the little baby bug in the end who was hurt, and I was like,
Yeah.
baby bug.
You kind of get
okay.
like you kind of get like an attachment to them because like you realize they're not really bad. They're just this movie very much has like kind of like the whole like the overarching theme of like nature versus like industrialization and like technology kind of taking over, and it's kind of got that
Precisely
that balance like aspect. And I think it does great where it doesn't it's not in your face, but it's also not like so subtle that you don't notice it. Like it's like that perfect balance that like makes, especially for the 80s, which was a completely different time in the world.
Also enjoyed that. Oh, sorry.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was just gonna say I also enjoyed, like, with most of these films, like the endings are always like pretty ambiguous. Like it's kind of just you can take it, kind of interpret it however you want to interpret it. Like there's really no set ending, and I think it worked with this film really well, and it works with most of the Ghibli films as well. As
Yeah,
you were saying.
where there isn't like a clear ending. It's just kind of it ends very abruptly, but like definitively, and it kind of leaves a lot up to the interpretation of the viewer.
Yeah.
This is a this is such an intensely environmental film, which I'm sorry, one of you said this, and it set the seeds for that, if you'll pardon the pun, for the rest of Ghibli's stuff. You know, Miyazaki is such an intensely pro-environment person, and what I love about this film is that there's a central theme running throughout the whole runtime, which is this concept of fear and how fear is, you know, the root cause of a lot of destruction and malice that we see, especially in nature. And it's brilliantly summarized in the very beginning of the film when the squirrel fox, or the fox squirrel or whatever, like bites Nausicaa. And who is Nausicaa? She's kind of this a deity like character, and of course she doesn't react with fear, so nature knows to respect her and live beside her. That theme is in almost every scene of this movie. It's so brilliantly done. I'm not Bill, you had mentioned in a off mic making a list of our personal rankings, so I might hold off on like my personal thoughts on the film for a little bit. But I wanted to go back to what you said about the strong female protagonist. That is something that Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli does so well. They write for women so well. But what I love about it, and I credit where credit's due, this is something that was pointed out on my favorite non-indie podcast, Resonant Arc. Miyazaki is so good at writing women characters that embrace femininity, and it's such a beautiful thing to see, because in a lot of other movies and games and media, you know, there's been a push to be more inclusive with protagonists, which is unambiguously good. There's no arguing that it's not good to include more women as main characters. It's just a good thing. But what a lot of artists will do is create a woman protagonist that just takes all of the masculine qualities from a male protagonist and just say, okay, now you are the masculine protagonist that happens to be a woman. And what Miyazaki is so good at doing is incorporating femininity. And I don't mean like gender roles, feminine. I mean like the universe, yin and yang, that kind of thing. He incorporates femininity into Nausicaa. She is not overtly masculine at all. She doesn't go through the movie fighting, right? She doesn't fight to solve her problems. She is largely pacifistic and protective, and it's just a really beautiful thing to see. This movie, I watched this for the first time at the end of 2022, and it just moved me so much. I love it so much.
One key scene in this film that like always like sticks with me is so one thing that's really cool about Nausicaa is like, rather than like you said, Rick, rather than fighting, she speaks a lot more with her words and her actions, which I think is a very defining feature of her. And the one scene that always sticks out to me is the scene where she's inside the poison forest, and like she's going to rescue the crew from her village that kind of got separated from the battalion of flying machines. And she actually takes her mask off just to like show them that she's not afraid, despite the fact that it's actually killing her slowly by doing that. And it actually like gets them to calm down and like return to like sanity long enough just so they can get out of the danger. And it's a powerful scene because it really shows Nausicaa is not messing around, but she's also not going to do something stupid.
Yeah.
And right after, what does she say? She says something to the effect of, oh shoot, like I breathed too much of it in, right?
Yeah.
So it's showing that she is human, but what does she do? Instead of fighting, she sacrifices part of herself. She takes the mask off. She says, be not afraid. She's becoming this Christ-like figure. She's one of my favorite protagonists of, I think, all time. Yeah, I'll say one of my favorite protagonists of all time.
So because we're going to be doing the ranking at the end, I think we'll save our thoughts on the films until the end just to save time.
Sorry.
No worries at all. You actually kind of gave me the idea when you said it there, and I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. We should do that.
Anyone who's listened to my show before knows that if you give me an inch, I'll talk for a mile. It happens.
No worries. So moving on now. So this was one of the films you said you did not see, Rick, and that was Castle in the Sky. So Castle in the Sky was interesting to me because this one I actually did vaguely remember just from like the character designs, but
Mhm.
this one, I'm not gonna lie, was probably the most boring out of all the ones we watched.
I think it had moments that I really liked, but there were so many moments where I just was uninterested. Um, but it didn't balance well. But there's definitely parts that I did really enjoy about it. Um,
So
just not well. It wasn't the best. It's not the best. We'll just go
so
with that.
to briefly summarize it, it's essentially set in a fictional like 19th century world where it basically there is like this like essentially this like other race of like humanity that like was up in the skies and they kind of went extinct in a way, and the other half of humanity has been down on the earth, and there's only like a few like ancestors of this race of humanity left. And the whole goal, basically the whole overarching plot is that the main villain of this film, who is probably the most effective character just because he is like he's a villain that's utterly irredeemable, like he's a true villain in every
Oh yeah,
aspect, which is actually
it's one of the
actually
best parts of the film. I would
yeah,
say is when you kind of truly understand the villain and the villain's motives and just how he just like is a downright just awful human being. Um,
which
it
is actually a rarity for the Ghibli films because
yeah,
most of the villains have redeeming qualities in the films. Like this is the first one that's outright like this guy is just awful
this
in
guy
every
just
way.
sucks. Like,
Yeah. Which also is helped by the fact that he's voiced by Mark Hamill, who's basically doing his like Joker voice only
Oh
like
my gosh,
oh
really?
yeah,
yeah, it's like it imagine like Joker if he wasn't unhinged. That's basically the voice Mark Hamill does for the character.
yeah.
Um but yeah, the film essentially it's like the girl falls from the girl was kidnapped and she falls from the flying machine, and basically she meets this boy and they go on an adventure back up to the castle, and then the girl gets kidnapped again, and it's kind of like one of those like save the girl save the world kind of things.
I will say this is one of my gripes, though I do have, is sometimes I feel like they push the whole they're in love relationship.
uh
It feels a little forced in this film particularly, but sometimes it just feels a little pushed. Which
this
is
film
why,
had very much had like a classic like RPG style romance story where they meet and then 5 minutes later they're in love.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it went very quick. Honestly, I did enjoy though, like so. Part of it too is when they're traveling. There's like this gang of like bandits, pirate. I think they called them pirates. And I did enjoy the gang of pirates, even though because they were first not their friends, but then eventually, the two main characters kind of grew on them, and they kind of just became like a family with the pirates, which I did enjoy those scenes. But
Yeah, it was interesting how they kind of changed it on you because when the film starts, you actually think the band of pirates are the villains, but then they end up being like kind of like anti-hero like side protagonists like later on.
yeah, this
Overall, though,
probably
this
makes
one
no sense
no,
how we're describing it. I will say though, we got to bring up the robots.
oh yeah, the best characters in the film.
The best characters were the robots.
They're basically just these sentient robots. Well, they have like they're like artificial intelligent robots, and they kind of basically are from the colony in the sky, and they basically are just there protecting the nature that's hidden within the castle, including one of the little creatures from Nausicaa as a little Easter egg, which was kind of funny.
Mm,
Oh, nice.
the little fox.
Hmm.
Okay.
I'm seeing that this was, I mean, obviously, as most Ghibli films are, composed by Joe Hisaishi. How was the score for this? Was the music good?
Probably the best aspect of it, honestly. The animation and the score were all excellent. I think the problem was this film just was too long, and it just doesn't really go anywhere. Like the payoff at the
Yeah,
end,
it definitely I agree. It definitely didn't feel like it was going any like you were like, "Okay. Okay, we're
like
here now."
when you compare it directly to Nausicaa, its predecessor, it Nausicaa, they're both long films, but Nausicaa like goes by wicked quick because it's such a fast paced, like everything happens kind of movie.
Yeah.
This one, it's kind of like there's just points where it's like, all right, get on with it, please. It's like, oh, she's kidnapped. Okay, now they got to go rescue her. It's
Yeah.
kind of the slow droning plot that kind of holds a lot of films like this back, and it's long. It was very long and it felt long. That was kind of my problem with it.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess another thing too. I didn't really. I feel like we haven't really gone over the plot, but it was kind of hard to follow at times. Because it just it wasn't the best film. That's what basically what we're saying. It
Yeah.
wasn't the very best film, but there's definitely like honestly the climax where you kind of find out too that the main character is related to the villain because they both have the same ancestors, um but yet they're two sides of the same coin, where one is this more down to earth character while the other is this completely opposite, only self-centered, only intentions for themselves character, um which was interesting, which is why I think the villain is probably one of the best parts of the film. Um,
Yeah, it's a weird case where the villain's more interesting than the protagonist, and that's only just because he's such an irredeemable like character that you're kind of fascinated by him.
yeah,
Just because it's like, wow, this is a legitimate villain in a film.
yeah,
But yeah, I'll save my thoughts for the end on that one. You had
yeah,
mentioned that like you hadn't seen this one, Rick. You really didn't miss much. I still think it's worth
yeah,
watching.
yeah. I think it's worth watching. For the robots and the villain.
And the music really
And
is
the
the.
music, yeah.
But moving on now, so now we get probably. I mean, this film is literally the mascot of Studio Ghibli. My Neighbor Totoro. And Alex, you said this is like your favorite one. Not
It's
your
probably
favorite
my
one nostalgically, I
it's
should say.
nostalgically one of my favorites. It's a very I'd say that this one also is the most kind of like down to earth one. Where it's not like it's the end of the world. It's not like there's a war or a battle going on. It's just like a wholesome story. Um which is why I enjoy it. So I guess the main plot is that a family is moving into the countryside. With two young daughters, a husband, and a wife. And the wife is currently sick and in the hospital, so the daughters can't see them, can't see her often. But the whole story kind of centers around they've moved into the countryside and they're kind of learning. They're able to see these friendly wood spirits, and kind of their interactions with them, and kind of it makes them like love living in the countryside, and just I don't know, embracing like nature in the countryside. I don't know, I just think this one is very wholesome. It's very cute. It's basically about two daughters kind of growing up and kind of finding themselves, and also battling through a really tough scenario. Like I'm sure a lot of people could relate to this story, especially where it's a father who's basically kind of having to take hold of the whole family while his wife is away and can't help. Um, but I enjoyed this one. Totoro's adorable. The characters are adorable. Um, I like this one a lot.
This one emphasizes so much of what Studio Ghibli are masters of.
Yeah.
It's been a minute since I've seen this one, but if memory serves, I mean, there's not a lot of plot movement until like the last 25 minutes or so, right?
Yeah, a lot of it in the beginning is more of just kind of I'd say it more introduces the characters, in kind of the world. It's a little more. I'd say it's world building, and then the plot is more towards the end, introducing the girls to Totoro and the other forest spirits, um, and
The cat
kind of
bus. The cat bus.
the cat bus. We love Cat Bus.
But that's what Ghibli does so well is they don't they're so adept at telling these really beautiful and touchingly human stories through their illustrations and animations and the food and the imagery and the world building that they don't need this constant plot beat,
No.
to be moving forward. They can just let children exist in a world and be filled with wonder. It's really
Yeah.
beautiful.
I think a lot of it is about too like kids' imagination and kids being
Yes.
kids.
I
Which
love
think is
the ambiguous sorry. I like the ambiguous nature of this film too, where it's kind of like the whole time you're kind of always wondering, like, is Totoro and the spirits real, or is it just a figment of the kid's imagination? And the film
Yeah.
doesn't exactly give like an answer for either thought, so it really leaves it up to the viewer to kind of decide, which I
Yeah.
like.
Because there's definitely scenes like where like one of my favorite scenes is like when they do like a little rain dance. It's not a rain dance, like a little dance to kind of they plant some saplings in the backyard and they want them to grow. And in the whole Totoro almost dream-esque imagination world, they grow these trees that are humongous and it becomes like a whole forest in their backyard. But then when they, wake up the next day and go in the backyard, they see some of it did grow, but they're little saplings. So it kind of brings you on that line, um, of is this reality or is this imagination and wonder. Um, but then there's other scenes like um where May, the youngest, goes missing and they have to find her. And then Cat Bus kind of brings them to the hospital because the whole reason she went missing was because she wanted to see her mom because I believe they'd gotten a call that her mom wasn't doing well and she wanted to know, like, she was worried her mom was like dying, and wanted to go see her, but everyone said she couldn't, so she went on her own. um but not Totoro, Cat Bus brings them there, and there's that scene of them in the tree with Cat Bus behind them, which is a pretty iconic image from the film. um and it's like ambiguous of like, did they get there on their own or did Cat Bus really take them there? But they were there because she brought her mom like the corn, the the ear of corn. um so it's really, I don't know. I love this film. It's just very sweet. And it was definitely, the tone was so different from the other films that we watched that were more kind of intense and kind of had more
Yeah.
like the world could end plot wise, and this one was just like, Totoro, I'm a forest spirit. And
This
like,
one was more of like a coming of age story with like basically just two kids kind of growing up and accepting like reality.
yeah.
Because this film also kind of brings you back to reality at times too. Like you go through the whole whimsical Totoro stuff, and then all of a sudden you get the next scene, and it's like the mom's not doing well, and you're like, "Oh right, this is real. Like there's actual stuff happening." Which
I thought because because of the Disney-esqueness of this film, I really thought the mom was gonna die, and I was so happy she didn't die. But Disney, they love to kill those mothers. It's a big thing in Disney.
yes,
Poor Bambi's mom. Where are the moms? Where are they? They're in the Ghibli films.
they're in the
My
Pixar
gripe with
films.
Disney.
But tish.
All right, they're in the Pixar. Pixar doesn't count. That's like its own little like parasite in the corner. Not parasite.
What? I
Not
love Pixar.
parasite.
I thought that was a bad
they're like
choice
their
of word,
own.
Alex.
It's a bad word. I like the Pixar films more. It's like the redheaded stepchild. It's like doing its own thing over there. It's making great films, and Disney's making some great films, but not as good as the Pixar ones. Anyways, the moms don't die in those ones.
Except when they do. Finding
Except
Nemo.
when God damn it! No, Nemo! No. Oh, I forgot about that.
back to
Anyway.
studio. Back to
No,
Studio
no,
Ghibli.
no. This is our podcast, Phil. We always get off topic. This is
That's
where the
true.
clown music starts playing. It should just be when we get off topic.
Yeah. So another fun celebrity voice actor in this film, the father was played by Tim Daly, also known as Superman in the Superman the Animated Series.
Oh yeah, I remember you pointed that out. Also, the two sisters were played by Dakota and Elle Fanning. So it's kind of cute that they were both, they were actually sisters too.
Mm. Yeah. Any other thoughts on this one, Rick? Or
Yeah, I don't know. Like, this is just kind of I don't want to reveal my ranking too soon.
okay.
It's a perfectly pleasant and fine movie. I think it's really ironic that, a big motif in this one and with a lot of Ghibli films is childhood innocence.
Mm.
And as an adult, I watch that stuff and I tear up. I'm like, this is so beautiful. I can't believe it. But if you would have shown this to me as a kid, I would have been like, get this out of here. This is so
Yeah.
boring.
Sucks.
Why are they so annoying? Like,
I want to see fighting.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So moving on now. So after My Neighbor Totoro, we had Kiki's Delivery Service. And Kiki's Delivery Service was the one that I had seen back in the day because Cartoon Network used to play this one on repeat, I swear, like all the time in the early 2000s. Because just for a little like context, like about Studio Ghibli making it overseas, their first attempt to get like their first real attempt at localization and dubbing was when they brought Nausicaa over and they completely like butchered it, like changed the plot, like everything about it, like really badly, to the point where Miyazaki actually made a rule for any time one of his films gets brought over, you can't change the plot and you have to like basically be as true to the text as possible. And Kiki's was really the first one that really kind of took off over here initially, despite not quite being what I'd say the best representation of Studio Ghibli.
Mm.
Can I say a quick aside about the localization thing?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
So like you said, the original dub of Nausicaa got kind of butchered, and it wasn't like up to Miyazaki. It was a lot of like executives. And after that, he said like, I'll never, if we ever localize anything again, I get the final say. Like he's very protective of his work.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
As
at a
he
certain
should
point,
be.
oh, absolutely. At a certain point, I don't remember if it was Nausicaa or if it was something that came after, but Harvey Weinstein was involved, weirdly enough. And he was trying to like make all these changes. And Miyazaki mailed him a sword and he attached a note to it that just said, no cuts. Like, no cuts to my movie.
Miyazaki
And that's just
knew
the
this
most
guy was a bad guy. He
that's
knew
just
it.
such a badass thing to do.
Mm,
Like Andy told off Harvey Weinstein. Like,
Yeah.
so cool.
that's always a plus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's actually a great point though, because just one final touch on the localization stuff. So most of these films have had two localizations over the years, at least for the early ones. There was the original Steamline Entertainment dubs, which were done by the same studio that did like the original Akira dub, and that was like very
Pleasant.
yeah very early dubbing practices and not exactly the most amazing like voice cast. I mean, they did for the time, they did a great job, but nowadays you kind of listen to it and you go, things have definitely gotten better.
Yeah, also the version that we listened to this, it just
Oh,
had a
okay,
lot of
we'll get
sound
we'll get to that.
issues.
We'll get to that.
Because like as soon as it started playing, I was like, Bill, there's something wrong with the audio, and he was like, I don't really hear it. I'm like, just keep listening.
So later down the line, Disney actually went and redubbed every single film with their professional like Hollywood voice actors and like their own like style, which some fans really enjoy, others aren't as big into it. I personally thought it was they were very well done. But yeah, I guess to touch on the Kiki thing, for whatever reason, when they transferred the films to Blu-ray, they like accidentally like messed up the dynamics on the voice track for Kiki's Delivery Service.
Oh no.
And when it got moved over to HBO Max, it actually got worse. And that was the version that we listened to. And it's not like them unlistenable, but like when you listen to it, like everything sounds super high, like pitched for no reason,
Like
and it's
something just sounds off. Like the whole time you're like, oh.
so when we watched this, it had been years since I had initially seen it, and I remember thinking like, I was like, huh. I was kind of thinking in my head, I'm like, I don't remember it sounded like this, but I was thinking, yeah, maybe that's just the ears. And then as we were finishing up the film, I actually looked it up, and I guess this was an actual like error when they transferred it to like Blu-ray and then it further to HBO Max. So that's just a thing I'd like to note for anyone that's going to watch this film on HBO Max.
Mm,
It's the only one that I know of that was seriously affected by this.
yeah.
Is that on both the English and Japanese tracks, or is it just one of them?
I believe it's just the English track.
Just I hope it's just the English.
Yeah. I didn't listen to the Japanese one. I'll have to look into that, but I believe it's just the English track that got screwed up. Which is a shame too, because speaking of celebrity voice cast, this film actually has some pretty significant names in it. Particularly, Christian Dunst is Kiki,
Yep.
and the most interesting one by far is the cat is actually voiced by Phil Hartman in what would be his final
Yes.
Yeah.
role before his tragic murder.
Man, R.I.P. to one of the greatest to ever do it.
Yeah.
That is one of the things that I knew about this. I've seen a bit of this in the past. Like you said, this was on Cartoon Network all the time. So I've seen scenes of it. And that is one thing that I've always remembered, that Phil Hartman was the cat.
Yeah, and he ad-libbed most of his lines in the film too, which is amazing.
Wonderful.
Oh wow.
There was a few lines in this film where I heard it, and I was like, "Oh, that was definitely an ad lib." There's no way that was in the original script.
It was very touching. Like you could definitely see that he truly enjoyed playing this role. Which I mean, on some notes, it's like I'm glad that like the last role he played was something that you could tell he enjoyed. But of course, I wish he could have brought more creativity to this world.
Well, especially just one last thing on Phil Hartman, like any Simpsons fan, like back in like the 90s, like he was like one of the most prolific voices on the Simpsons, and he was basically in so many things that you wouldn't even like recognize at first until you actually like hear the voice and go, wait a minute, I know that voice.
Hi, I'm Troy McClure. You might know me from such hits as "Smoke Yourself Thin, Stupid," or whatever it was.
or Lionel Hutz is constant like screwing over the Simpsons.
No, money down.
Yep. Oh man. But yeah, so Kiki's Delivery Service is it's another kind of lighthearted film, especially coming off of it's funny with the Ghibli films, the first two are very serious and have like overarching darker tones, and then we get followed by probably two of his most lighthearted films.
Yeah, most definitely.
So to sum up Kiki's, it's also a coming of age story in a lot of ways, where it follows the titular character Kiki, who is a witch in training, basically to become a full-on witch. And the whole plot is she eventually basically goes off on her journey to basically study as a witch in her own city for like the first time.
Yeah,
and
it's
it basically
like a tradition in the whole witches that they leave at the age of 13 to kind of train, and then they can come back home, but they have to do it on their own.
Yeah, and then like the whole like kind of thing is like she ends up in this like city and like immediately gets hit by the culture shock of like basically people, there's no witches there, so everyone's like kind of looks at her like, that's cool, whatever, we're trying to live our lives.
Not everyone. There were some people who were looking at her like, oh my god, like a witch, like I haven't seen a witch, like it seemed like the town hadn't like seen a witch in like years. Some people obviously didn't care, but there were some people who were like totally amazed by it, which leads to kind of how she ends up kind of settling into there, where she meets Osano, I believe is her name, who owns a bakery, and she's pregnant, and she ends up like helping her out.
Yeah, she basically hires Kiki on as like a delivery girl who basically she kind of helps like run things out when like the bakery's slow, and then she kind of makes her own money doing that. And during the plot of the film, she kind of like, one of the overarching things is she kind of loses her love for being like a witch, and she actually loses her powers in a sense, with a very distinct scene of like the cat actually stops talking to her and just starts meowing like a regular cat,
Yeah.
which
Well,
kind of showcases her loss of power because
yeah. And I
she's
think
going through a time
a
basically.
lot of that too, it was supposed to, I think, imply like heartbreak because she was almost she was stretching herself too thin. She was trying to do so much at once, but she kind of wasn't, thinking about herself. Because one of the characters that you meet, his name's Tombo, and he's a boy who just instantly becomes infatuated with Kiki. Um, and I think one of the things too is like he loves flying. And to see Kiki flying is like just the most amazing thing in the world to him. So one of the things is I know she was like trying to do multiple jobs at once, try and get everything done, and be able to go to a party that Tombo invited her to. And unfortunately, like on the route of her delivery, it starts pouring, and everything basically that could go wrong went wrong. And I know one of the scenes that was actually really powerful is that um she helps this um older woman she had helped before bake a pie for her granddaughter. And she helps her bake it. The oven's not working, so she helps repair the oven. She does everything out of her way. It starts pouring, and she still delivers the pie in perfect shape. And when she goes there, the granddaughter is just
An absolute
like
ingrate.
yeah, basically like she's just like awful, and Kiki is kind of just like stunned that someone could not appreciate something that had so much love put into it. So I think after everything and being exhausted from the journey and just having missed the party with Tombo, I think she just like she fell apart. Like she just was like, is this even worth it? Like, and she was
Hmm.
heartbroken. And I think that was like a really powerful scene. And I think she ends up getting sick after. And when she kind of wakes up from her fever, that's when everything changes. But that scene was very distinctive to me because I think especially nowadays, I think a lot of people take things for granted. When people put their heart into something and they kind of push it to the side,
And then
and you have
reality
to
kind of comes to basically reality comes and just kind of pushes it down on you.
yeah. I thought that scene was very powerful. And she kind of has to figure out what to do after losing her powers and kind of recover them. And I know she like spends time with Tombo a little bit. And he introduces Kiki to her friends, but she's intimidated by his friends because I think actually the girl who turned down the pie was one of the friends of his, and she gets intimidated and she walks away. And she, despite like Tombo just trying to kind of that olive branch, like reach out, kind of make the connection. Um, but she does end up kind of bonding with someone else, someone she had helped in the past, which was this artist she helped out. Um, and after like talking to her and speaking with her and spending time with her, it kind of like reinvigorates her like love of magic and kind of helps cure that heartbreak she's going
Hmm.
through.
And then that leads into the film's big climax where there's a common theme with Studio Ghibli films is flying contraptions and just flying
Yes.
machines in general. In this film, we have a dirigible,
Mm.
which is essentially a blimp slash zeppelin for the time.
Yeah.
And there's a windstorm that actually causes this thing to fly out of control. And Tombo actually is holding onto the rope to keep it from flying away. And then he's just in the air now.
Yeah.
So basically, she has to regain her courage to go save him because she can't fly anymore at this point. And
Mm.
one of the funniest scenes is because her broom got damaged, she doesn't have a broom anymore. So she actually just takes a broom from a random guy sweeping the street
Treat.
and then uses that. And it's just funny because she's flying on a push broom essentially,
Yeah.
which is just a funny visual. But she ends up saving the day, and it kind of she basically kind of learns after that she has to like look at the world differently, and it's got kind of that kind of feel good ending where it kind of comes full circle now, and now she has a better understanding for like everything going on, and she's like basically become what she wanted to be in the first place.
Yeah. And the how this movie ended too, with like it ended with her, writing a letter home to her family and saying that she's fine, and that she's doing great, and that even though like she feels homesick at times and she may be struggling, she's remaining confident and proud.
Hmm.
Um and I don't know, I thought this was a very nice like coming of age story. But also kind of getting out of your shell story, because I know one thing she really struggled with was kind of making those connections. Like Tombo was being really nice to her the whole time, but she kind
Hmm.
of pushed him away. And I think a lot of it was just kind of out of fear, almost of like rejection, and not understanding like once he finds out more about her. Um, but I think it's a really good coming of age story.
Hmm.
Um, I really enjoyed
So
this film.
yeah, this one nostalgically was the one that I was like looking forward to the most
Yeah.
going on. But to move on now, because I don't want to just keep going on about this
Yeah.
one. I feel bad because this was one of the ones Rick didn't get to see. So
Sorry,
we're
Ray.
just
No, it's okay. Everything that you're describing, this is like the Studio Ghibli's like toolkit. You know, a
hmm,
coming of age story dealing with loss of innocence. It's I can't wait to watch it. I will talk about why I didn't watch it a little bit later in the episode, but I'm really excited to get to it.
okay. Okay, so this one was actually a surprise to me because this was one that I wasn't even aware of
Yeah.
until like very recently. But Porca Rosa.
He's a
Um,
pig man.
he's Batman.
He's
He's Michael
Batman, but he's a
Keaton,
pig. He's pig man.
and he'll tell you the whole film. I'm just a pig. He says that so much.
So
It's the best part. When he first started talking, it was the greatest moment of the film.
oh, because it's so unexpected. Like you see like this pig man, and you're expecting like this high pitched like squealy voice, and then it's straight up Batman, and you're just like, okay,
This is perfect.
this is where this film's going. I'm all for it. Um, Now we kind of talked through the last one, so I'd actually like you to go first, Rick, on this one.
Yeah, sure. I saw Porco Rosso for the first time again at the end of 2022, and I was shocked at how much I loved it.
Mm,
You know, it's not a film that's like overtly trying to get across a message or an allegory, which is rare for Studio Ghibli, or somewhat rare anyway.
Hmm.
But it was just so damn entertaining, and
Yes.
I loved it. I love Porco Rosso as a character. I think he's he's so funny. This is another great example of great writing for women with because Porco Rosso is kind of a chauvinistic jackass a lot of the times, and I can't remember her name, but there's one woman in the film that just doesn't put up with it, and by the end he's like, oh okay, I was wrong.
oh,
And it's
Theo?
great.
no, Madame Gina, I believe.
No, I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
you're
yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking
No,
about
no,
Theo.
Theo's the other one that comes later in the film.
It's one of
I
them.
think they both. I think
So-
they both kind of do. Like they
Madam-
both are like very much not going to put up with his crap.
So Madame Gina is the older woman that like knew him from the past. Theo's the younger girl that's like the pilot mechanic that he meets later on.
I think engineer. I think she's an
Engineer, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it was Theo then.
Yeah.
Honestly,
I kinda think it
both of them fit.
Yeah, I think both of them fit, but I think you were more leaning towards Theo, because a big part of it is like at one point his plane gets severely damaged, and he goes to his old friend who always fixes his plane to fix it, and at the time he basically had to lay off like most of his people, so the only people working for him are women, and I believe it's like his sons have all like quit to find other work, so it's just Theo as the only engineer, and originally he's like, no, you're not doing this. I want my money back. But she basically is like, no, I'm doing this for you. So you better listen to me. And it was very, I like to see, I don't know, I really enjoyed that part where she was like, I'm gonna prove you wrong, that I'm just as good as any other man out there in that field. I don't know, I feel like I related to this character a lot, especially as a female engineer, where there's only, well, now it's only just me in my whole company is like one of the only few female engineers. So I definitely related to this character
Hmm.
a lot.
I also like the fact too that once she proves herself, like he immediately just like his entire like tune about her just changes, and like he completely just like he just accepts her gradually as the film goes on, which I thought was a
Yeah.
nice touch.
Yeah, that scene with the two of them. Oh gosh, I want to say it was after his plane had crashed or something, and they were kind of like together at nighttime.
Mm,
Was really touching.
Hmm.
mm.
I also just to bring it up because it was me and Alex thought this was the funniest thing in the entire film, but one of Porco Rossa's allies that he meets during the film is a character named Ferrari because Italy. But my favorite part about this is he's voiced by Tom Kenny, and it's just serious SpongeBob. It was literally just
Oh
once you,
yeah, I forgot about
once you hear it, you can't unhear it. It's just SpongeBob
I was
being
just waiting for him to go
serious.
like do the laugh. I was waiting
Yeah.
for it.
I had to bring that one up because it's that voice is so distinct that like the second I heard it, I'm like, that's SpongeBob.
Yeah, that's SpongeBob. Do the laugh.
But
Do
I,
the
I will
laugh.
I will say though, Ferrari was also a cool character because he actually does like help Porco Rosso out with like his escape,
Mm,
which is fun. So another thing about this film that I found really interesting too was it's definitely one of the shorter films that Studio Ghibli put out,
yeah,
and it goes by in like a minute. Like it is like one of the quickest films I think he in this entire set
yeah.
because it is that enjoyable from beginning to end. Like once you start watching it, the next thing you know, it's just over, and you're kind of like
What?
you're kind of
Yeah,
depressed because you're like, I want more. Like that one was
yeah.
super good.
And this one, it definitely also ended pretty abruptly, I would say. But in like the best way possible. Like it just kind of it basically Porco flies off, and it cuts to like several years later, and it shows like Theo building planes, and spending the summers at the hotel with Gina. And you actually see Porco's plane can be seen parked in the credits rolled, and it's also it implies that he turned back to normal, but it never shows it, and I'm glad
Yeah.
they never truly showed his face.
Yeah,
I think it's just one of the because I think it's just one of the best parts of the film. We didn't need to see it. Like
Mm.
it wasn't necessary.
So for
Um
context for people, like during the film, it's heavily implied that so Porco Rosso's actual name is Marco, and it's implied that he was cursed at some point, and like that's why he has like the face of a pig.
yeah.
And it's never really implied like why he was cursed or why it's like that. It just
I
kind of
think
like
I think it had to do with like
because he
he
was the lone survivor from
yeah,
his
he
like
was the lone, and I think it also was implying that he cursed himself, like in a way.
that's
Like
also a theme that Ghibli films use a
yeah.
lot is like self cursing and like kind of
Self
self torture.
self-deprecating.
No, it's like self torture in a way.
Well, yeah, well it's like it's putting a lot, I guess,
That might
like
not
the
be the right.
blame.
That might
I,
not be the right word
yeah,
for
no,
it.
I'd say more the self-deprecating, like the feeling like you're at fault, for things that were out of your control, especially. And I mean, I think especially for this, it's being the lone survivor. You have that, instant regret of like, I was I really the one who deserved this? Because I think it
Hmm.
also implied that during that battle or fight where he was the lone survivor, I think it was Gina's husband was one of the people who died, and he felt tremendous guilt that he survived and he did not. Because I believe it was like they had just gotten married or something too.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I love the ambiguous ending though to this one because like it ends on such a a cool note, because like there's literally a fight that happens between Porco Rosso and the quote unquote American pilot.
Yeah.
Um, and like the end of the fight, they're both like just like their faces are just bruised beyond belief, and the other pilot makes the comment of, "Hey, what's going on with your face?" And that's like literally the only clue that we have that
Yeah.
he might have changed back.
You know, they were planning a sequel for a little bit. Like I think Miyazaki had said if Ponyo was successful, which of course it was, that they were going to make a part two to Porco Rosso. But I don't know whatever happened to that. I think
Um,
they just dropped it.
Considering we'll get to it later, but considering the plot of the film that followed Ponyo, I think they might have changed their mind and went with something else.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
um, so, anyways, moving on. Okay, so this one it was interesting to me. Princess Mononoke. This film, this film is in a lot of ways like probably the really big one for a
Yeah.
lot of Studio Ghibli fans. And Rick, I'd like you to go first with your thoughts because Alex has her own thoughts, and I'd rather let her go after.
Rude.
Sure. Yeah, this is one that I had seen. I'm due for a rewatch of this for sure. Um, I remember being really struck when I first saw this film because this was around the first time I had ever seen Studio Ghibli with
Mhm.
Howl's Moving Castle. And you know, Howl's deals with some mature thematic material, but it's not really grim,
Mm,
and well, maybe grim's not the right word. It's not dark. And Mononoke is
dark.
incredibly dark.
It's by
It's
far
really
it's
dark.
by far the darkest film
It is
of
most
all the.
I mean,
definitely.
you get blood and gore in like the first 3 minutes,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
and
I
that immediately sets the tone for the rest of the film. But it's so, I mean, again, we talk about strong women characters. You have that here. A strong pro-environmental message.
Mhm.
You have that here. It's just it's really brilliant. I so many of these are masterpieces, and I'm not even using that term lightly. It's just they are masterpieces, and it's tough to say anything. It's tough to like really, you know, say more than that. It's you've got to just experience it, and this is one of those, man. I love this film.
Yeah. To save time, because this is by far the longest like Ghibli film by a good margin. We're not going to give like a full plot summary because it also kind of would kill the point of this movie because this movie's really one that you kind of have to watch to truly
it's
understand.
I'd like to
Yeah.
say it's an experience. Like it really is cuz it really takes like I as soon as you watch it, you're drawn in, whether you like it or not. Like you're drawn in because, as you said, like the first 3 minutes, it's like blood, gore, and you're just like, what? Like I was not expecting it for Studio Ghibli, and I won't lie, I'm not a big gore fan, so this one was tough for me, but I do really enjoy the message, and just the whole story and the characters. I really enjoy them all. But this one was tough for me to watch because I think I was also very shocked because I was not expecting that much blood and gore in a Ghibli film as well.
Yeah, this one is very like this one goes like straight to 11 like within like the first 3 minutes like like we were saying earlier, and it's like, oh man, this one goes hard like
Yeah.
very quick. Um, this one's really hard to explain just because there's so many different things that go on in this film.
Yeah.
I will like to say like the villain in particular is both like a very effective villain, but also kind of like you kind of like them at the same time because they're not 100% wrong in their
Mm.
like thought. It's just how they're going about it that's not right. I think
Yeah.
is
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because it's like
Because there's some parts of her that are so wonderful. Like
mm,
she's created this town, but she's also created this almost like a sanctuary for women. Where they're the strong ones and they're the breadwinners. And but then at the same time, it's like she's destroying something, but why? Like, why can't they both coexist? Like, why does one have to go and one have to stay? And it's that, you know, it's like you
It's
like
the
her, but you can't, but you also it was tough.
it's the classic battle between like nature and like machinery and like industrialization.
Yeah, man versus nature. I think that's
Mhm.
human versus nature would probably be a better way to say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's a profound theme in this one. Again, I mean, Miyazaki has his really staunchly held beliefs, and that's just one of them. And
Yeah.
this is maybe the best example, I think,
Oh yeah.
of human versus nature.
Mm. No,
I
by
agree.
far, because I mean Nausicaa had it, but it wasn't nearly as like it was a lot more subtle about it. I guess you could
Mm.
say this one is very much like the subtlety is not quite as not quite as there. It's much more. Yeah, this is bad. Like you have to please listen. Like I
It's less so that he was presenting it in a way that's like, "Hey, everybody, this is an issue," and more that he was like, "I'm really mad about this issue, and I
Mm.
need to talk about it."
exactly. Yeah. Like I said, I this one I'd rather not go full plot summary just because this film really does need to be like watched to truly be grasped.
Yeah.
I will say like
I think everyone should watch it.
I will
That's the
it's
truth.
it's the one that you'll either love it or you'll be in I don't want to say you'll hate it cuz like it's a good movie, like there's nothing
No,
bad about it.
I think it's like either you'll love it or you'll almost be like uncomfortable. I think that's
Yeah,
the
cuz this
better way to
it's a
describe it because I think you are initially enthralled and you understand the topics, but it's also a very like it, it's just I don't know, for some people like with gore and stuff it's uncomfortable. But
it's a very
it's
real
real,
it's
you
very
know.
real. I think that's like the best way of describing it.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts on Princess Mononoke?
I'm over here rubbing my hands together to get to the next one, to
Okay.
be honest.
Okay. It's funny because this is like one of the most famous ones, but it's like at the same time I'm kind of like, yeah, but the next one's better. And not nothing against this film. It's a great film, but so the next one, this is the like literally the one that like I think put Studio Ghibli on the map in terms of mainstream appeal.
Yeah.
So Spirited Away.
Ugh.
Who wants to go first? I
I
think
was
Rick or
enthralled by this film. I
okay.
was hooked and I loved every second of it. Like it, I feel like nowadays especially I feel like the culture is you'll watch a movie but you'll have your phone there and you're kind of distracted by your phone. I was not distracted by my phone for a second in this movie. I watched it till the very end. Um and it it was just an incredible experience. Like I truly adore this movie and I would watch it again and again and again. Um I loved it.
Okay. All right. Rick, so you were saying you're pretty much ready to go for this.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm gonna echo a lot of what you said, Alex. It's not my favorite, my favorite Ghibli film, but if you asked me today what is their crowning achievement, their magnum opus, it's Spirited Away.
Yeah.
Not
It's just everything in this movie is perfect. The duality between Western consumerism and traditional Japanese culture, this notion of Shinto belief, the spiritualism, everything, the animation, the music. Oh my God,
Yeah.
the music. Everything about this film is just it's perfect. I don't have a single negative thing to say about it.
No.
So when it came to this, so this was me and Alex's first time actually ever seeing Spirited Away, which in hindsight I'm like, wow, we were
Missing
late
out,
we
yeah.
were late to the party on this one. My best way of describing this film 100% to me is lives up to the hype.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Like literally when we went into this, like right when I hit the play button, I looked at Alex and I was like, so this is the one that everyone is obsessed with and I want to know why.
Yeah.
And literally after watching it, I was like, I understand why. That was fucking phenomenal.
Yeah.
Everything about it. Like
From
literally
the plot to the characters to just the music, the backgrounds, everything. It's just top top of the notch, incredible.
And this film will shock you too, because there are points in it where like you think things are like normal, and then all of a sudden it's like, bam, we're in wacky world now, and you're on the train for the rest of this trip. I guess is my way how you put it.
And all of the characters too. It's just filled with so many amazing. I mean, Chihiro in and of herself. I mean, she is amazing. But Yubaba is one of my favorite
yes.
villains in Studio Ghibli.
Yes.
Haku is a really cool character as well. My goodness, there's not enough time to just talk about all the things this film does perfectly.
Like literally my favorite, what makes an amazing film is when every character, despite like their morality, is likable. Like that to me, that is like what makes a great film. And literally every character in this film, you just immediately you vibe with them. You're like, okay, I understand, like this person might be evil, but like I dig it. Like what she's going for is like, it's like, all right, I want to see where this goes.
Yeah.
Because like Ubaba even like inherently isn't particularly like evil in like the sense of like just like supervillain. She's more just kind of like a greedy woman who just wants to control everything. Which I'm trying to think of a theme for this film, because this film
well, I think a lot of it has to kind of do with, I mean, greed. I mean, like I think one of the most famous scenes in the beginning is when Chihiro discovers like her parents have turned into pigs because they were, taking the food that was meant for the spirits. And I think that was like I think that kind of sets the tone for the story. And looking into, greed and morality and, I think society right now, we have so much, but are we truly, grateful for everything that we have? Kind of going into that theme.
It's amazing that Miyazaki was able to do not just, I mean, Howl's comes a little later, and we'll talk about that with, how he felt about the West at the time. But this movie, I mean, a big theme, like you said, Alex, is, this societal greed. It's Western consumerism, right? Like at the very beginning, Chihiro's dad, well, both her parents, sees that huge buffet and they just take it without thinking because it belongs to them. And he says, "Don't worry, honey, I've got my credit card." And it sets it up right away. And Yubaba is the same way, right? I mean, she's incredibly greedy, and I might be misreading this. It's been a minute since I've seen this one, but when Yubaba takes Chihiro's name away, the kanji that's left, if I'm remembering correctly, is the kanji for yen. So it's this reducing her to currency, because with Yubaba, that's what it's about, just control and greed, and it's perfect. It's really perfect.
Yeah. I mean, I think like one of my favorite scenes, which is this is spoilers, is when Haku discovers like his true name, and he like kind of gets his name back from Yubaba, and he kind of breaks like the curse in that he's able to I forget what it was. Like he doesn't have to be controlled by her anymore. And he like remembers like that he's the spirit of like the Haku River. And the reason why he was so drawn to Chihiro is because he knew each other. He like saved her when he was the river. And I loved that scene. It was just very I love this whole movie. It's just so wonderful.
It also speaks to how wildly good this movie is that we've talked about it now for how long and haven't brought up the absolute mascot of No Face.
Oh. Yes, No Face. Oh, I mean, No Face. Like I didn't really. I had no idea this movie. So when No Face, he seemed like a nice little guy at first, and then when I saw him like eat the frog man, I was like,
So my
No
favorite
Face.
that little going to when we were watching the movie real quick, literally my favorite moment of that was like we were watching it and like Alex is like, me and Alex were joking, we're like, I like this guy, he seems like someone I'd want to chill with. And then the second he ate the frog guy, me and Alex literally both looked at each other and went, I don't like this guy anymore.
But even like after all of that, like I'm brain farting. Chihiro still kind of sees the good in No Face, and wants, like, takes him on her journey to find Yubaba's sister, and then ends up kind of finding a place for him to belong, or for them to belong. No Face, and I really like that. Like, she, even though like he was this kind of almost, but he was also a greedy. He became that kind of monster that is greed. Um, Taking people and, like, I mean, eating people, but also like the scenes of him like throwing the money everywhere and everyone's just going after it like crazy. It really embodied the whole spirit of the movie.
And
Also,
I love the climax though, like where like she finally gets back after like visiting she gets back to Ubava basically to finally be like, all right, where are my parents? And she basically, I love the climax of like Ubava basically being like, all right, fine, you brought me back you brought back my baby, now I'll let you go if you can pass this test. And she's basically like, here is all the pigs, if you can find your parents, I will turn them back and you are free to go. And she basically takes her one look and go, oh well, they're not here. And it just was like such like a nice like powerful moment where she's like, it's like she was clearly trying to trick her there, but like she's grown so much as a character that she didn't see through it. And like she basically showed that she's finally standing on her own, which I really liked.
yeah.
And forgive me if we've mentioned this already, but it deserves mentioning again. One of the best soundtracks that Joe Hisaishi has ever done.
No, 100%.
Very much so.
So Spirited Away obviously was like a massive success, and
to the point that it even actually has like stage shows, like stage
Oh, yeah.
productions that are
Yeah.
that they're in, like, you can see them in America as well, which I think just shows like how big this story and how beloved this story is.
No, it really was. And like, because I remember like even like back in like, so this came out 2001, so God, we were still in gotta show our age here, we were still in elementary school at that point. So yeah, like even like when I was in middle school, I remember like even like the kids who hated anime like still talked about this film, because this is one of those anime films that just kind of transcends the anime like kind of wall of entry, and like it's definitely like a gateway anime film in a lot of ways.
This when folks say things like, animation is a subpar genre, like this is a clear example that is just not true.
Exactly. So moving on now, so this is part of what I consider like the trilogy of probably like the big three of Miyazaki films, which was Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, and then finally the last one of this era, Howl's Moving Castle. So where to begin with Howl's Moving Castle? So fun fact, this one has another Batman as the protagonist, with Christian Bale, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, who would like to start on this one?
I'll go first.
Okay.
So this was the first Studio Ghibli film that I had ever seen. It was my introduction to Ghibli. It was my introduction. Well, I might have seen Kiki on Cartoon Network. I don't know, but it was my introduction to Joe Hisaishi's music, everything. And I remember watching this for the first time, and I didn't know what to make of it at the end. I was so dumbstruck that something aimed quote unquote at kids, which by the way it absolutely not necessarily was.
Yeah.
it moved me so profoundly. I remember like we finished it. My girlfriend at the time and I finished it, and I was sobbing. I was like, "This is so good. I'm never gonna be the same." And I wasn't ever the same, but for better or for worse. But
Mm.
I adore this movie so much. It pains me not to put it at number one, because it is a bona fide masterpiece. Just like you said, Bill, like Spirited Away and Mononoke. Oh, it's everything about it so good. And shout out to flippin' Billy Crystal for for playing Calcifer.
the whole
What a
time.
good performance.
The whole time, Alex was like, "Who is that? I know that voice." And I'm like, "That's Billy Crystal." And she's like, "Who did he play?" And I just looked up, and the first thing I saw, I was like, "Oh, it's Mike Wazowski." And she's like, because he's basically doing his Mike Wazowski voice the entire time, and it's amazing. The whole cast in this film is excellent. Like,
the
Christian
voicing
Bale
is perfect.
Christian Bale as Hal is really good, even though it's such an odd role for. When I think Christian Bale, I think like his awful Batman like voice that he does, and like he actually does it at one point in this film too, which I thought was really funny. Actually, I think before that film, I think this was actually before he was Batman. Now that I think about it, maybe, or he just it doesn't matter. But yeah, great cast. So this was like, I think the first one that kind of incorporated CG elements too into like the animation to a degree with the titular castle. What did you think of like the whole kind of like overarching plot of like the woman is cursed and she basically goes off on this journey of like it's kind of like her own journey in a sense?
I loved it. I thought it was a really beautiful twist to the coming of age structure that we see all the time. They just flipped it on its head. And the consequence of that is not only do we have a genuinely touching coming of age story, but it also has this like nested theme within it of how folks treat and think of the elderly, which is something in films that will always like make me weep because like, you know, people can be really cruel to old people.
Yes.
And all they've done is, you know, survive, so it's not even their fault. I don't know, I thought it was brilliant. I loved it.
So I also love the fact that like, so the movie's called Howl's Moving Castle, but Howl is not the main character by any means.
Sophie.
It is Sophie by far is the main character of this film. And she is such a likable character, both her younger self and her older self, because you really kind of like, you get attached to her because of her determination and just like her life. Basically, it wasn't particularly good to begin with. And it basically just got completely put on its head. And she basically, rather than just giving up, she says, "All right, I'm going to have to figure this out." And she goes off on this journey essentially to find something to do in life.
Forges her own path to kind of figure out. And I really love the themes of like inner beauty as well. That like, and the thing she struggles with, because you'll see it in the movie, is that like at one point like she had already broken the curse, and she was almost like she was cursing herself, and like because she just doesn't think she's good enough and doesn't think she's pretty enough, and really like she was beautiful all along on the inside and the out, which I really enjoy.
So one thing about this film that like kind of gets lost in like translation a little bit between the source material and the actual film. So this movie is actually based off of a fantasy novel of the same name. And one thing in that novel that's better explained than in the film is Sophie actually is also kind of like a sorceress, like witch kind of character. And one of the things that you might miss it the first time watching it is like there'll be random points where like she'll like revert back to being younger and then immediately go back to being old. And at first you think it's just because the curse is kind of weird and wonky like that. But in reality, it's actually, the curse is already broken at this point, but Sophie is actually cursing herself because of her own self-doubt. And the book explains it a lot better than it is in the film. The film, it kind of leaves it sort of ambiguous. That's why when you get to the later portion of the film, she's permanently young again, but she keeps the gray hair as a sign that she's accepted who she is, which I thought was a really nice touch.
Yeah, all of those transformations during the film, like there's a read of it where it's like, oh, it's just random. But I mean, and you are right, Bill. I mean, that I'm sure the novel explains it better because novels are words. But it's, I mean, each change is so deliberate.
Oh,
It's I love it so much.
Like a great scene is when Hal comes back and he opens up the curtain to where she's sleeping and he sees her young.
Yes.
And then he kind of just closes the curtain because he doesn't want to say anything. And like it kind of leaves the viewer as like, huh, that's weird.
Yeah.
But it's because she's sleeping at that point. She's not awake, and basically she's not in control of her magic at that point. So she's reverted back to her younger self. And it's supposed to be a little context clue that probably won't go over the first time you watch it, but on repeat watches, like it becomes very much more apparent. So also another thing about this film we've mentioned in pretty much every one of these films, but the soundtrack for this film.
Yes.
It has the most beautiful soundtrack. I remember like after watching this, like the next day at work, I just had this in the background while I was doing work, just the soundtrack, because it's so wonderful.
So when basically every person I talked to before we watched this basically was like, oh yeah, Hal's is great. You're going to love the soundtrack. And like everybody specifically pointed out the soundtrack. So I was like, guys, don't do this. I don't like getting overhyped for stuff. But like Spirited Away, this one completely matches the hype in terms of both soundtrack and the film itself. Because my God, like everything, this was another one where like you weren't on the phone at all, like you're just constantly watching it because you're like, I need to know what happens next. Like,
yeah. And I think like the world too, like it really draws you in, especially with like the castle, because like when we first said like first I had not seen the movie, so when I first saw the castle, it wasn't what I was expecting, but at the same time it was somewhat enchanting because it just like to someone else, like it was probably just a pile of junk stacked together. And in reality, when the castle came apart with the magic, that really is what it was. But then when they go inside and it becomes like this magical world on the inside, like it truly, the world drew you in as well.
Another big thing with this movie is, Miyazaki is staunchly anti-war, and this movie has a huge theme of that. This movie is partly made in response to the 9/11 attacks, where Miyazaki saw America's response to that and was so wildly displeased and thought it was so inappropriate that he wanted to make a movie where it bombed in the West because of how he like depicted this idea of war. And there's a really, really terrific back and forth between Sophie and Hal, where they at one point they see these battleships coming in, and Hal says, they're battleships on their way to burn cities and people. And Sophie says, burn cities and people, the enemies or ours? And Hal says, what difference does it make?
That was
that's ultimately Miyazaki's whole feeling towards war is why would you retaliate and murder so many innocent people in this way like we did after the 9/11? It's such a deep film. I've seen it 3 times and I don't feel like I understand it.
I feel like every time you probably take more and more out of it as you go. It's definitely one I want to rewatch again, because
what I found
feel
interesting,
like I could dig even deeper with it.
What I found really interesting too was it's based off of not even a Japanese property. It's actually based off of a Western property, which I thought was very interesting. How he basically took something not native to, at least I swear it's like an English book, the original story. But how he managed to take it and just completely make it his own.
Yeah.
While also staying true to like the original source material, I thought was excellent.
Wikipedia says it's a 1986 novel by Diana Wynne Jones.
Okay. I knew the name did not sound Japanese, but I didn't want to just assume. But also, I like how you made the point of mentioning how he wanted the film to bomb in the U.S., but it ended up being one of the most successful over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, which doesn't surprise me in the slightest, because
Yeah.
most people, the message probably went over their heads. So
And
The man just can't not make a banger.
yeah. I will
you
say
really
too,
can't.
this was one of the ones where it was like I also think like the love that Sophie and Howell built, it felt more natural than some of the other ones where it kind of felt a little not forced, but like it just was like they met, they're in love. Like this one, like it definitely felt like they talked, they communicated, they built this relationship, and the love felt more natural. Is what I want to
Well,
say.
that kind of plays into the whole theme of like Sophie is a young woman in the body of an old woman, and Hal, for all intents and purposes, is a child basically in the body of an adult.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's an interesting parallel between the two, like, because there are points where like Sophie is just fed up with him, and she's like, he's a child, like just acting like a child, and like I just love the dynamic that every character has. Even the villain is, well, quote unquote villain, because she stops being a villain very pretty much after her main appearance. But
Mm.
I think the real is actually, I don't even know. I guess yeah, she is the villain, but she
I
stops
think,
being.
well, I think the villain more is just, I'd say the villain isn't really a person. I'd say it's more of like
It's more of a
the
concept.
the war and everything that's going on. And I think that's
Mm,
more of the villain if there was. Like there really wasn't one. I'd say it's more, yeah, it's just the war itself and everything that's happening.
yeah.
I mean, there's a read where the antagonist, quote unquote, can be, the inner, what's the word? The inner self doubt and cowardice, respectively, of Sophie and Howell.
That is very true.
I'm not prepared to make that argument.
Yeah.
But you could.
Not totally. All right. So this is where things get funny now. So we just had three very serious films that probably are like the epitome of everything that makes a Ghibli film a Ghibli film. And so to follow that up, we get probably, so we're back into Totoro territory here now, with another probably one of his most lighthearted films, and that is Ponyo.
Yes.
So
Oh.
Alex, you're the one that had the most I guess experience with this one.
Mm.
How about you start?
Yeah, so Ponyo, the whole story takes the plot centers around basically this little goldfish named Ponyo, who wants to become human. So you can already tell there's it's I'd say this film is like parody but inspired by like the Little Mermaid, of like this little fish wanting to become a human, and in pursuing her goal she befriends a 5-year-old human. So both the characters are very young and adorable um in this story, and basically that's really the plot, is she wants to become human.
Mhm.
But during because of this, she wants to become human, she kind of unlocks, she become she so her mother is like the spirit of the ocean and like the basically like goddess. So she's a very magical, she has a lot of magic, and as the story goes on, like she's kind of discovering her magic, but she's also losing kind of control of the magic. um so the whole plot ends up, like the big plot moment ends up being because of like the magic she's getting, and because she wants to be a human, it's distorting the world and changing it. So you'll see like the moon or like the sun is like coming down closer to the earth, like the ocean is rising, everything's flooding, and everything is turning upside down. And a big theme of the story is they end up having to kind of make a choice that she becomes human, and before she can become human, like her family wants to make sure that she will be happy and she will be safe. So they basically test her young friend, the 5-year-old friend she made. And it's like that he truly like loves her and wants to take care of her. But honestly, this story is it's lighthearted. I'd say it has a lot of Totoro in it, where you're watching um, two young kids, become friends, and also like a little like kitty love, like puppy love. Like he loves her and she loves him, and she wants to be a human so she can be with him. Um, it's cute. It's not like one of the greatest stories, but I'd say like some of the visuals are amazing.
Oh, the
Like
visuals are like the highlight of this film, honestly.
honestly, this I'd say this film, I'd describe it more, it's a visual experience. It's not as much about the story. It's about kind of just watching and seeing what's happening. Like there's one scene where there's these massive waves, and you see that the waves are actually like these fish, and they're giant fish, and you see Ponyo, she's running on the fish, and she's running across water. And at one point, also, side note, the mom in the story
Is the best character.
is
No,
a horrible driver. She
she's
is not
she's
safe.
the best. She's the best character in the movie.
Oh my god, she drives like a psychopath. At one point, she like jumps, like speeds the car over to jump over the. It was crazy. She's an awful driver.
Yeah, but you love her because she's so endearing.
No, I do. I definitely appreciated her, but I would not get in a car with her. If even if you give me $1 million, I'd be like, it's not worth it. It's not worth dying today.
So, Rick, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so you both touched on the animations for this. I don't know if it's because it was all hand drawn. I don't have like, I don't know the terminology or the vocab for like animation. But I was gobsmacked by how good this movie looked. It's just so beautiful, and the color palettes are really, really vibrant and nice. I liked it a lot. I was shocked at how much I liked this movie. I knew going in that it was an adaptation, or at least inspired by the Little Mermaid, not the Disney version, but the Brothers Grimm version. Is that who wrote it? I don't know.
Maybe we'll go with it.
But yeah, like I had this preconceived notion, like, oh, this is going to be low on my list, and it might still be, just because of how many other amazing films they've done. But I was shocked at how much I like this. Oh, and fun fact, this is just like a little aside. I watched 3 of these movies preparing for this episode, half in Japanese and half in English, just so I could hear both sides.
Oh, nice.
And Studio Ghibli was one of the biggest reasons that I started studying Japanese, was because I wanted to, one day be able to just watch all of these in the native language. So last night I sat down and I was like, okay, Gake no ue no ponyo mio dana. And I was like, let's go. and I started in Japanese, and I could understand a lot of what the kids were saying because they speak so simply. And I was like, oh my God, like my work's paying off. Yeah. And then the adults would start talking, and I was like, oh my God, what's happening?
To learn more.
But yeah, the both versions of this are just so good.
I also like too how there isn't, once again, there's really no villain in this movie. It's more just about, it's another nature versus like humanity kind of story in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
because like at first they kind of set up the father as the villain, but you quickly learn that he's not really a bad guy. He actually
loves his daughter and wants her home.
But also, once you realize what his intentions are and what he actually is trying to do, you realize, oh right, he's actually 100% in the right here, and that's why like they have to. That's why the whole like plot kind of changes as it goes on, because he's like, all right, this plan has failed. Now we have to move on to another plan, and then we're going to make it work just for the sake of the world. He's also voiced by Liam Neeson, which was kind of fun.
that was pretty fun.
It's just like you heard the voice, and I was just waiting for. Well, actually, the whole like daughter getting like quote unquote kidnapped. I immediately thought of Taken, and I was like, oh no. But yeah, I love this film. It's actually the last Ghibli film, like Miyazaki film too, to use like hand drawn animation before the switch to digital, which because I remember me and Alex were actually debating when we were watching it. We were trying to see if it was digital or if it was hand drawn still. And some of those backgrounds you see, and you immediately go, "Oh yeah, this is definitely hand drawn still."
Yeah.
Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why it's so striking. But
Mm.
it's visually just it's so stunning.
It's by
It
far the
is.
simplest film out of all of them, just in terms of like
Yeah.
substance. But I think that's kind of what makes it so good, is that
Yeah.
it doesn't drag you down with some plot that with like a plot that's unnecessary. It literally is just kind of a fun little adventure that goes by really quick, but is like an enjoyable experience the entire way through.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes is when um Ponyo and I'm brain farting on that. Oh, Sosuke. Ponyo and Sosuke kind of set out to go find his mom. And they go sail out in the toy boat that they Ponyo uses her magic to make larger. And I love that. I don't know why, but I love the scenes of them like sailing in their boat, um, coming across people, and then eventually, going to find his mother. I don't know. I love that scene, and I love just the magic of the world. And just how I don't know. It's just there's something like just innately just magical and sweet about this film.
It also has its comedic moments too. Like one of
Oh
my
yeah.
favorite scenes in the entire film is when the father goes out on another boat like trip out at sea, and he sends out a Morse code letter to the family on their hilltop house, and he's basically apologizing to his wife the entire time, and every one of her responses like, "I don't care, go away."
Right.
Like,
Yeah, she just starts spamming it, baka, baka,
yeah,
baka.
like just repeatedly, and I was like, "That's great."
I
And the
also
son is
love
completely just like going with it. He's like, "All right, whatever."
I also love the old ladies in the retirement home and how
Oh, they
some of
were
them are
great.
super sweet, and then there's just that one who's like just bitter and done with the world, and I'm like, oh, that's gonna be me in the future.
My favorite part though was when they get out of the little bubble undersea where they were being protected, and they all get up on land. They're all like spry and like, walking. Who needs this sitting down stuff? And I'm just like, you guys do you. That's just awesome. Uh,
Yeah.
so, any final thoughts on Ponyo before we move on?
It's a
Ponyo,
cute movie.
Ponyo, Ponyo fishy in the sea.
Yeah, I was waiting for that. So now to move on to the final Miyazaki film. As of now, he actually is making a new one, which we'll
Yeah.
get to before we wrap this up. But so The Wind Rises. This movie was shocking to me in the sense that like I went into it with no expectations, and I think I came out like looking at the world differently after I finished watching it.
Yeah. I was also very surprised by this film, but I also there's something that I love about this film, and it's the realism of it. Um in that, I mean, not that I don't love the magicalness of the Miyazaki films, but there is just something about this where it it didn't need magic to be a wonderful story. It just was a wonderful story. It didn't need any extras. It was the story, and it was based off someone's real life.
Yeah, so unlike the previous books, this one is partially based on a true story,
Yeah.
which to me was probably the most fascinating thing that really engaged me with this film.
Yeah. I think too I really love this story because I don't know. I went to engineering school, and it's something obviously I'm passionate about. So to kind of watch the story of an engineer and how they ended up made their impact on the world, like I really loved it because also too I kind of related with this character because it starts out and he wants to become a pilot, but he can't because he's kind of set back based off his eyesight, like and he's like, if I have bad eyesight I can't fly planes. And then he's kind of finds out, well, if I can't do that, maybe I can design them. And for me, I know Like I started out in a different major and I thought it was what I wanted to do, and I was just like, I don't like this, but I like this engineering world, but this isn't what I want to do. Is there something else that I can do? And I think I just kind of connected with the story more. Um,
Mm.
but I think that's one of the things that I really like about it. I don't know.
So
No.
I had set aside time today before this episode to watch two films, this and Kiki's Delivery Service, and I was gonna watch them back to back, and then have an hour to like get a coffee and tidy up before recording. And I got done with this and was so deeply moved that I decided not to rewatch Kiki's and just instead look up like critical responses, rewatch scenes from this,
Yeah.
and etc. This is, you could make the argument that Mononoke is an adult film, but I think because of the violence, but I think the thematic material in that is graspable by children. I think The Wind Rises is a very adult film,
Yeah.
and by far one of the most complex. I would put it up there in complexity with like Grave of the Fireflies, which is perpetually tied as my number one favorite Ghibli movie. Um, this this whole film is just so incredibly what's the word? There's so much moral grayness and layers that and it's dealing with this, and I'm not going to like give any kind of analytical takes because I need to rewatch this at least once more to even begin to grasp it. But it's this idea of what happens when a dreamer, when an artist, that you could easily say parallels, let's say Miyazaki, is so focused and so enamored with their craft that they lose sight of the horrors in the world. What do you do? And we never get to see Jiro actually grapple with that for real, because the ending is so masterful and so
Yes.
it's so good. But throughout the whole movie, we get this couplet: the wind rises, and so we must live.
Literally, so just for a little context, this film is based off of the true story of the actual Jiro Horikoshi, who was the actual inventor of the Mitsubishi A6M Zero fighter, which was Japan's main fighter plane during World War II. Like any World War II documentary you watch, when they talk about the Japanese, they mention the Zero because it was like the perfect plane for that time in the war. Like it was a piece of art.
Yeah.
And I had known about this. Was the funniest thing to me. Because I grew up and I liked a lot of World War II stuff. I liked reading about like ships and stuff. So I knew about him. Like I had read stories about him in the past and like how he created this plane. And when I finally like watching this, like it didn't click to me at first until I saw Mitsubishi essentially, and I was like, wait a minute. And then it clicked with me. I'm like, this is the story of that man. It is high. I will say it is dramatized. Like they add in, obviously the love
story. Yeah.
That is completely like just for the film. Like it wasn't part of his real story, but for the sake of the film, it's not important because it actually enhances the film. But this film literally grabbed me from the start, and like I couldn't take my eyes off it. Like,
yeah, we were both like we barely talked watching this movie. We just we were experiencing it the whole time. And I think it's just like a lot of it can be summed up. Like one of the there's like a quote at the beginning. I'm like kind of on the Wikipedia, but I feel like it really kind of sums up the whole film, is that airplanes are not tools for war. They're not for making money. Airplanes are beautiful dreams. Engineers turn dreams into reality. And like that really is like the whole story, is just like it wasn't about war. It wasn't about money. Like it was just about him making his dreams a reality. Um with also just I don't know. This movie was like so unexpected. And I loved it. Every second of it. It was just a wonderful, wonderful film.
But my counterpoint to you, Alex, is that there's a duality here, and that is side one.
mm,
This idea that artistic vision is not about war; it's about making something amazing. In fact, the real Horikoshi had a quote related to his planes. It just said, "All I wanted to do was to make something beautiful."
yeah,
And then the second half of that duality asks the question, "At what cost?"
yeah,
Yes.
When does losing sight of this and maintaining this laser focus become a struggle?
yeah.
And it's wrapped up so neatly at the very end when Jiro is talking to the Italian aviator whose name I can't
It's
remember.
a Caproni.
Yes, and he says, like, would you rather live in a world with no pyramids or with pyramids? And he said, personally, I would choose pyramids. This idea that this human tragedy is going to occur when we create these things. Humans will inevitably do this. What are you going to do? So the wind rises. We must keep living.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know, dude.
No,
it's so good.
I really like this film was like the surprise for me. Like I just was not expecting to love it as much as I did, and it was I don't know. This one is just like honestly, all of what we're really coming down to is all the Ghibli films are just incredible in
I-
their own special ways.
Yeah. So for this one in particular, like I remember when I first was planning this episode, I was planning to go super in depth with The Wind Rises,
Mm.
but I actually thought about it as I was like as we were planning this and like getting closer to the actual recording day. I actually am under the strong belief of this is a film that should be watched and not explained. Like you need to truly see it for yourself because it is a masterpiece in every
Agreed.
way.
I just to lighten the mood a little bit, the second half of this I flipped to English, and it was distracting to hear John Krasinski as Honjo.
Yeah, a little. God, so I don't want to spoil anything about this film because it's a masterpiece. So I think at this point now, I think we should transfer over to our rankings and final thoughts before we wrap this up.
Yes.
So who would like to go first?
Bill.
Okay.
You're first.
All right. So ranking these films, I went from this was harder than I thought it was going to be because literally this was first. Literally, as we were going through these, every time we watched the film, I was like, "Oh, this one's my new favorite." I was like, "Nope, no, this one's my new favorite."
Yeah.
So I'm gonna start obviously with number 10, which, not a surprise, was Castle in the Sky. It's not a bad movie, but it's the most there of every Miyazaki film, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Following that, so this might be a little controversial. I actually at number 9 said Princess Mononoke, not because I don't like it, just because I think it's literally I just liked every other film more. Like I think that my problem with Mononoke is it's just so long, and like there were points where I kind of was just like I just wanted it to be over because I wanted to move on to something else. That's my real only gripe with it, because the story itself is great. I just think it's a lot of film, and it's the hardest one to truly grasp, in my opinion. So moving on from there, it was Ponyo. It's just a fun film all around.
Yeah.
Then My Neighbor Totoro. Those two I kind of could interchange. Like they're both just kind of fun films. So then following that, then I had Nausicaa. Not because so Nausicaa, like literally the only reason it's here is just because the other films I just think are better. Like not because Nausicaa is easily like a top tier anime film. Following that one, then I have Howl's Moving Castle. Absolutely adored it. Everything about it. The only reason it's lower is because of nostalgia, and you'll understand when you see the other films.
Yeah.
So following that, we had Porco Rosso. This one I put so high just because this one was completely unexpected, and this was actually for a while my number one choice because I was like, holy, why is this film way better than I had any expectations for? Then following that, I had my nostalgia pick, which was Kiki's Delivery Service, just because that film is the one that made me want to do this episode because I did enjoy that one back in the day. Then following that, Spirited Away, like lives up to the hype, excellent
Yes.
film. And then The Wind Rises was my number one. Like I, I want to watch that film again because
Me too.
I still have not fully grasped it, and I think that when a film leaves you like that speechless after watching it for all the right reasons, like to me that's just the epitome of everything a Ghibli film should be. And to me, it's amazing that like literally, in my personal opinion, his at the time final film was his masterpiece, like top work.
It's a good list, man.
Thanks. I'm not how Mononoke being kind of low might piss a few people off, but I think my reasoning is good. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
It's your list. Well, I think the truth is that none of these films are really bad.
No,
Like,
they aren't.
None of them aren't. It's yeah. Do you want me to go next?
Yeah, sure. We'll let Rick end it off.
Okay. So my number 10, shocker, Castle in the Sky. I think we know why. I think there's really great things about this film, but a lot of things that could be improved. My next one is Ponyo. I do really like this film, but it gets low because now I'm gonna have the stupid Ponyo song stuck in my head for the rest of the week. Um, honest, that's the reasoning. My number 8 is Princess Mononoke, only because gore and stuff just makes me very uncomfortable. I'm not good with that kind of stuff. So a lot of the times I was kind of looking away because I don't do good with the gore. But I really appreciate the story, the characters, and the plot. I don't do good with gory, bloody goodness. My number 7 is Kiki's Delivery Service. I do really enjoy this. I did really enjoy this film, but there's just other ones that either nostalgia or I just connected with so much more. Number 6, Porco Rosso, which was also for me a big surprise. I love this film. Honestly, all of these ones after, I truly did adore them all. It was very hard to rank them, but the next one's just they just kind of impacted me more. Number 5, I have Howl's Moving Castle. This one actually I originally ranked lower, but after listening to that soundtrack for like a whole day, I just like it made me really love the movie even more for the music alone. Number 4 is it's mostly nostalgia, but I love the wholesomeness of it. And that would be Totoro. Just one, it was my first introduction to Ghibli, so I kind of rank it high. Um, but it also I just love how adorable and magical and wonderful the world is. Number 3 for me was Nausicaa. I I just really loved that film. And I was like I definitely think it was like a great start to the Ghibli empire that it is today. Um and I love the story and I love Nausicaa as a character. As we said, like I think she's just an incredibly written character overall. Um my number 2, not 9. Number 2 is Spirited Away. Um Again,
Oh.
I love this film. Like I was enthralled with it from the beginning to the end. But my number 1 was also The Wind Rises. I I loved that film. Like it made me cry. Like it was just I loved every second of it. And it was I think too it was just such a surprise. Like I was not expecting to love it that much, but I adored it. It was incredible and I recommend everyone to just watch it because you'll truly understand I feel like what we're talking about once you experience it for yourself. But honestly, all of these are incredible films overall, and it like really just because they're not all number one, it's they're all incredible films, every single one.
Here, here.
Yeah.
All right, so now your list, Rick.
All right. Well, by default, number 10, just because I haven't seen it, but it probably would end up here anyway, would be the Castle in the Sky.
Yeah.
Not much to say there.
It's a good
I'm
spot for
sitting.
it.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
villain.
When you make
Good villain.
so many other great things. My number 9, I'm gonna keep that with Totoro. 8, I'm going with Kiki's Delivery Service. 7, I think I'm gonna go Ponyo, which would put number 6 as Princess Mononoke.
Okay.
5, it pains me to put this so low, but Porco Rosso. It's definitely number 5. And numbers 4 through 1 could all be number 1, frankly. Number 4, I've put Spirited Away, which is that the lowest on anybody's
I
list?
think so. I think me and Bill both had it as number 2.
I think we did.
I mean, again, it could be number 1.
No, yeah.
Number 3 is Howl's Moving Castle. Honorable mention. That's right. I'm breaking the rules a little bit here. Honorable mention. I've got to give it to Grave of the Fireflies, which is one of the most tragic movies I've ever seen, but it's also an amazing Ghibli film that is not by Miyazaki, but I wanted to say I love it. That would put number 2 as The Wind Rises, and putting Nausicaa as my all-time favorite. I love everything about that movie. I don't think it's as a work better than Spirited Away, but personally, I just love everything about it. And with Ghibli, with Studio Ghibli in particular, I spent a large portion of my life as a classical musician, and just being an artist, thinking about art, and everything that Miyazaki stands for is what I would aspire to be as an artist. And this is classic, getting choked up on a podcast talking about art. I love everything. I love everything about these movies, and yeah, I'm so happy you guys asked me to do this with you.
Oh, no worries, dude. Thanks for
Thank
coming on.
No, it was awesome. And oh, I thought my computer just shut down for a second, but it was just the screen. I was like, shit.
I was like, oh no, did we freeze? Like...
No, I just thought sorry, I just ruined this nice
It wouldn't be the GNC podcast any other way.
God damn it.
All right.
Why do I always have to do this? What I was gonna say is I was also getting choked up just living some of these films, because they really are so impactful, and just they really just they get to you. They really get to you, and it's just a great experience talking about them, and I'm so glad you could join us for this podcast. So thank you for coming on.
No, thanks again, Rick. This was really awesome. Thanks for kind of playing the guinea pig for our first retrospective anime thing we've done. Hopefully we'll have you on again in the future at some point for another topic. But
oh, I would love it so much.
I guess to wrap this up, do you want to plug all your stuff real quick?
Yeah, I could do that.
We're gonna do an ambiguous ending, just like the Ghibli.
I am the host of Pixel Project Radio. It is a video game podcast where I like to examine mostly games that I like, but sometimes games that I don't, and analyze them as deep as I'm able to, with history, mechanics, narrative, and things like that. It's funny. We actually did an episode on our top 3 Studio Ghibli films. Gosh, a couple months ago at this point.
Oh, nice.
And my list has changed since then, but you'll hear some familiars in there if you decide to check it out. That was when my former co-host Ben, he was with me full time at the time, so you'll get to hear his as well. It's a really fun episode with lots of good music. But yeah, you could find us wherever you get podcasts. We've got the Instagram and the Twitter as the socials. We've got a Discord as well, so you can find us wherever you like to listen. And if you do choose to listen, I hope you enjoy it. And stick around, by the way, for a couple months, because we've got a familiar guest coming on to talk about a little game involving a dog demon.
Yeah. I wonder who that's gonna be.
And by the
It's
way,
me,
Alex,
guys.
I'll
It's
just
me. No,
say
just
this.
kidding.
I'll just say this on the show. The invitation is open to you as well. I happened to bring up that particular game to Bill, and he was like, "Oh, I like that game." So, but the invitation is open to both of you. You're both more than welcome to come.
Oh,
Thank
thanks, dude. You got Alex all choked up. She's like, people acknowledged me.
Wow, people like me.
I am a big fan of the deranged images that you post in your Discord server.
I need to get back into it. I've been building up a stockpile. I don't know. I kind of go through phases of like where I get overwhelmed by social media and interacting with people, and I just kind of disappear off the face of the earth, and then I'll magically appear again one day. So I'll appear again soon. I'm just kind of doing what I need to do to get myself together, and then I'll be back. But just need a little break. Getting overwhelmed.
Yeah, no, I understand. Hey, the wind rises. You know?
And on that note,
But
and on that note, once again, guys, thank you all for joining us on the Gaming and Collecting Podcast. The Gaming and Collecting Podcast can be found on all your major podcasting platforms, particularly Apple Podcast and Spotify. We are made on Spotify for podcasters. Anchor no longer exists. And you can follow us on all the social medias. We have a link tree. It's linktree.com, the Barber Who Games, easy enough to find. And you can join us on our Discord server where Alex posts curse shit and there's a lot of anime
a lot
gifs.
of beans.
Yeah.
A lot of beans.
Yeah, that is true. But once again, guys, thank you all for joining us, and we will see you all next time.
Ponyo, fish.
Oh no.